Welcome back to Early Stoppage Podcast. Today we're breaking down Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann UFC Fight Night. So first up in the main event, honestly not a big headline. I would have liked to see two better guys, but Anthony Smith, veteran here. But with that being said, I think Spann's winning this fight. I'm taking him by KO, TKO. Spann's got the 5-inch reach advantage over Smith. Smith's a slight favorite at minus 150, and obviously he's been around a lot longer. He's fought some of the top guys, but I don't think he's going to be able to handle this reach advantage. He's not going to be able to touch him. I think ultimately that Spann's going to keep his distance from him, not let Smith engage and get close, not take him down. Ultimately, Spann's going to put on a boxing clinic. What do you think, Troy?
I think you're completely wrong. I think Anthony Smith at minus 150 odds is a complete steal. After this fight, we're going to be questioning how it wasn't lined at minus 250 from the beginning. People forget how thin the 205-pound division actually is, and I think Anthony Smith's just going to reinsert himself back into the top 5. The guy he's losing against are incredible. I think after the first round, or maybe even in the first round, he's going to get through Ryan Spann. I think about in the second round, a ground and pound TKO finish or a club and sub, because we've seen in the fights with Johnny Walker, Ryan Spann has zero defensive responsibility in the striking. Although he has a reach advantage, he's just going to get into a lot of trouble with Anthony Smith because he has a way more well-rounded game. He has more slick setups in the grappling department and in the striking. And he's going to take his time and pick him apart, and that's why I'm taking Anthony Smith. And later on in the night, I'll tell you why he's in the parlay of the night as well. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we've got another fight at 205 pounds. Ion Cutelaba versus Devin Clark. Devin Clark coming off a loss to Anthony Smith in the first round by submission. Ion Cutelaba coming off a draw to Justin Jacoby, who I believe should have won the fight, is Ion Cutelaba. And with that being said, Ion Cutelaba is a monster in the first round. Last fight, he showed a little bit more efficiency and awareness of using his energy, and he didn't gas as fast, but he still had his always incredible first round where he almost finished him. Devin Clark's not well-rounded enough. Horrible with the defensive striking skill set. Horrible with the offensive striking skill set. He's a pretty decent wrestler. BJJ, not really that good. Ion Cutelaba's got some judo skills up his back, so his throws and his control, body lock takedowns are on point, and you see he hits like a truck, even though he's not the most defensively responsible, but I think he's the one that's going to take advantage of this matchup. He's the Moldovan Hulk right here. I think we're going to see a nice first-round Ion finish, and no matter what, the under is going to hit no matter who wins, but I'm taking Ion by first-round finish. What you got in this co-main?
Troy, I agree with you. I think Cutelaba's taking this win by KO. He's got 12 knockouts in his career already, and I think he's clearly the better stand-up fighter and clearly has more power than Devin Clark. Both these guys have a very similar height and reach, and they've both fought some of the top guys in their division. Ultimately, though, I think that, like you said, Cutelaba is going to come out strong. I do think Clark's going to come out swinging, too. However, I think maybe it does go past the first round, though. I'm saying a second round, maybe even third round finish. I think Cutelaba is going to try to conserve his energy a little bit more and not gas out because he's been getting that criticism. But looking at the next fight, we got Cameron Van Camp coming in on a week's worth of notice as Jim Miller steps out versus Nicolas Mata. Mata's the Brazilian. Mata was on the Brazilian Ultimate Fighter Series, and then he also just won his Contender Series fight. So he's making his UFC debut here. Van Camp is also coming into this fight, making his UFC debut. Both these fighters are probably going to come out strong, I'd say. It's their first fight. They want to make a name for themselves, want to get those fans liking them. Van Camp actually has won a few belts in some smaller promos, so I think he's got the pressure under control. He knows how big the stage is. Ultimately, I think that Van Camp's actually the better grappler, which usually is not the case when you're fighting a Brazilian guy. I could see this going to the ground. Maybe Van Camp getting that sub. I think if this was a full fight camp, that Van Camp would destroy Mata, probably sub him in the first round. However, with it only being a week's notice, I'm a little skeptical about it. It's basically an even-odd fight. I'm leaning towards Van Camp, but I think I'm ultimately have to stay away from this. What do you think, Troy?
I think that you don't know that Cameron Van Camp has known he's going to have a UFC fight for at least a month. Because when Paddy Pimblett started having his visa issues before the Luigi Vendramini fight, Cameron Van Camp was the assigned man for the job at 155 pounds. And even though this guy has fights at 170 pounds, he signed to make 155 pounds for the Paddy Pimblett versus Vendramini fight that was 2 weeks ago. And he knew a little bit before that. Right now, he's probably had about 5 weeks prep. I really do want to see the weigh-ins Friday to give my final verdict. And I do think Nicholas Mata is a very well-rounded fighter, but ultimately I think the size discrepancy and the power in the grappling department is going to be the big problem. I think we're going to see Cameron Van Camp have a Michael Chiesa-esque performance, just power through him and get a quick sub. But we got to see how he looks on the scale because this is a big boy coming down to 155 pounds. But next, we're moving on to the women's flyweight fight. Mandy Bohm from SBG Ireland, a.k.a. the Trash Can Training Factory, versus Ariane Lipski, who's now fighting at American Top Team. And she, the queen of violence and the former champion of KSW, is also not very good. But I think the UFC marketing machine wants to get behind Ariane Lipski because she's very good-looking and marketable. So, with that being said, that 7-0 record that she's going to take that O away from is going to put her in really good graces with the UFC and with the fans. And I think that she's probably going to win a decision here. But with this low level of fights, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a finish because crazy shit happens with very low-level fighters. So ultimately, I'm going to stay away from this, but I'm taking Lipski by decision. What do you got, Brian?
Troy, I'm going to put my lock of the night on this. I'm saying that the announcers mentioned that Mandy Bohm fights at Conor McGregor's gym at least over 4.5 times. Yes, Lipski is the better looking fighter, but you forget Conor McGregor. They love saying his name. They want Bohm to win so they can bring up that she's from his gym, bring up SBG Ireland. Obviously, doesn't have a great track record other than McGregor, but Bohm has a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. She has one win in Bellator. I think I'm riding with her in this fight. I think she may even take it by KO. Ultimately, I think that both these fighters aren't great, so I wouldn't really want to bet on either of them, but I'm riding with Bohm. I'm Team McGregor over here. So, on to the next fight. We got Christos Giagos versus Arman Tsarukyan, and this is the first fight on the main card. Arman's coming into this fight on a 3-fight win streak, coming off a dominant win against LI's own Matt Frivola. Giagos is on a 2-fight win streak himself. It's very clear that Giagos is kind of like a gatekeeper in this division. He beats the guys he's supposed to beat. He loses to the guys he's supposed to lose to. If Arman can beat him, it's clear that he deserves to be in top 15, maybe even top 10. Maybe he could move up. But yeah, I think Giagos is going to struggle with Arman's pressure. I don't know if that Arman will knock him out, though. Giagos is tough. Ultimately, I'm taking Arman by decision, 30-27. I think he pieces him up each round. What do you think, Troy?
I'm quoted saying this. Christos Giagos is a meathead with terrible fight IQ. I think he could win the first round just by holding him up against the fence and being very strong in the clinch and winning some exchanges. But ultimately, his gas tank and his fight IQ will let him down the stretch in this fight. I don't think Arman will be able to finish him, and that is why I don't think it warrants this 7-1 price tag. I do think Arman's going to win, but you can't be paying this much chalk on these guys. There's other massive favorites on this card that we will get to later that I also would suggest that they may actually be worth the heavy chalk, ladies and gentlemen. But next, we're moving on to a fight at 185 pounds. And this is another fight that's chalky that I do not approve of. Joaquin Buckley versus Antonio Arroyo. Antonio Arroyo lost to Darren Wynn in his last fight, getting out-grappled. Antonio Arroyo gasses out after 3 minutes. He's extremely explosive in the kickboxing department for 3 whole minutes, ladies and gentlemen. But that's it. You're paying the Joaquin Buckley highlight reel premium on this at minus 210. Although I think he's going to win by decision, I don't think he's going to use a grappling game plan and implement the same way that Arroyo lost in his last fight. And Arroyo's shown to be durable to not be finished by strikes. So I don't know that this fight is going to hit an under that people will be thinking. But I'm going to take Buckley, and I'm not going to bet it. I have a pick and no bet. What do you got, Brian?
Troy, I'm taking Arroyo by first round knockout. Yes, he comes out strong, he comes out a little crazy, but I don't think Buckley's going to be able to hang and handle this. Buckley has all this hype because of his KO against Impa Sagane. I'd say 9 times out of 10, Impa Kasanganay would have beat him. Buckley's only 2-2 in the UFC right now. He lost to Alessio Di Chirico in his last fight. And honestly, yes, Buckley may, on paper, be the more skilled fighter, but I think Ahoyo's coming out strong, and I don't think Buckley's as good as people make it seem like he is. And speaking about people that people love to think is good, and I think he's trash, Tafon Nchukwi taking on Mike Rodriguez. Nchukwi is a Contender Series alum. He's coming off his first loss against Jun Young Park. Nchukwi is the slight favorite in this at minus 125, but I think this is a bad matchup for him. Rodriguez is 6'4" and has an 82.5 reach, which is a 5.5 reach advantage. Both these guys are strikers. They like to stay on their feet. It's going to be a boxing match. And with that being said, when you have a 5.5 reach disadvantage and a 4-inch height disadvantage, you're gonna struggle here. And Chukwi's only fought 6 times total, and I really think he's not going to be able to handle Mike Rodriguez. I'm taking Mike Rodriguez by KO. And Chukwi, this train that everyone's on, I think it's over. I think he's done. What do you think, Troy?
I'm a Tafon the Don and Chukwi hater as well, Brian. I think, especially with him being listed as the favorite here, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion. I'm putting money on Mike Rodriguez. It's just a matter of how much. I'm probably thinking 2 units on Mike Rodriguez. I think he's most likely going to win by finish because Nchukwi doesn't have a well-rounded skill set. And if Mike Rodriguez actually takes this to the mat, I think he could get a finish rather quickly and power through him. But, Mike Rodriguez isn't known for his fight IQ, so that's why I'm not going to be putting too much. But I'm taking Mike Rodriguez for a nice underdog play here. And next, at the women's bantamweight division, we've got Pannie Kianzad versus Raquel Pennington, who has some great caliber of competition she's faced, even though she's lost to some of the best of the best. But I think this is more of a case of Pani catching Raquel at the right time. Raquel has been slowly regressing and losing to even less high-caliber opponents as time elapses. And I think Pani is going to really dictate where this fight takes place by keeping her distance in the kickboxing range and using anti-wrestling strikes that are not overextending on combinations so she doesn't get into range and get caught into a body lock. And with that being said, I'm going to take Pani to win by decision, and I'm relatively confident in this one. How do you feel, Brian?
Troy, I disagree. I say this is one of those fights where the UFC wants Pani to get a win over someone like Raquel Pennington, give her a reason to be fighting some top opponents. Obviously, Raquel Pennington has lost to a lot of top people, but she's a clear veteran in the sport. I think that Pani's bit off more than she can chew, and ultimately that Pennington's going to come out and show her what it's like to fight some of the top people in the UFC. I'm taking Pennington moneyline. I think it will go to decision, but ultimately I think it'll probably be a 29-28 with Pennington taking probably the second and third with Pani coming out strong. But moving on, let's go to Nate Maness versus Tony Gravely. It's a men's bantamweight fight. Maness is 5'10 at 135, has a 72-inch reach compared to Gravely being 5'5 with a 69-inch reach.
That's big.
And Maness has been quoted saying that he's going to get to Gravely's back, going to sub him. Honestly, I agree with him. Yes, Gravely is good at wrestling, but I think he's going to slip up. I think he's going to get tired at a point and expose his back. Maness is going to get behind him, rear naked choke. Yeah, ultimately, for this fight, I don't see it going any other way. Oh, if it does stay on its feet, if they do stay on the feet, he's got such a big height and reach advantage that there's no clear path to victory, in my opinion, for Tony Gravely. I'm taking Nate Maness by sub, but even moneyline may be worth it. What do you think, Troy?
I'm thinking Nate Maness as well, but my method of victory is going to be different. I'm going to take him by TKO in the second or third round after he stuffs a couple of Tony Gravely's takedowns and these scrambles start to wear on him. And then everything starts becoming more telegraph and the setups aren't as slick. I don't think too highly of Nate Maness. I don't think he's going to get into the top 10 of 135 and make a name for himself or anything, but I do think he's a pretty solid fighter. And I think although Tony Gravely's collegiate wrestling acumen is really high, I don't think he's got a well-rounded enough skill set to pose Nate Maness the necessary problems to get him out of there. I think he could definitely get him to the mat, but I am for sure he can't hold him there for too long. And then if he does, I don't think he can impose enough damage or threaten enough subs to get this one done. So I'm taking Nate Maness by finish. Next fight, we've got Dakota Bush versus Zhu Rong. And Zoo better be right when I'm picking Dakota Bush, motherfucker, because Zoo wrong is terrible. Dakota Bush is extremely explosive, and I think he's going to come out here and get this one done. A very reasonable price tag coming in at around minus 145 in this fight. And although Zoo has a lot more experience, his caliber of competition's horrible. Half the guys he's reversing barely have a 500 record or have more than 10 fights in total. So with that being said, I think you're going to see that caliber of competition really get exposed when he comes into his second UFC fight, although he lost his first. And I think Dakota Bush is really going to put on an exciting fight, and maybe we'll get a potential fight of the night contender in this bad boy. What you think?
Troy, I agree. I'd love for this to be the fight of the night. Both these guys are coming off their first fight, first loss in the UFC. They're gonna come out swinging. I think Zoo honestly has the striking advantage, and then it's clear Dakota Bush has the grappling advantage. Clear striker versus grappler. But with that being said, I'm leaning more towards Zoo. I don't feel comfortable betting on either of these guys, especially with not seeing them fight too much. But I think that 21 fights total, that experience is really gonna help him out. Ultimately, I think I'm riding Zoo TKO maybe. But with that being said, I don't feel comfortable putting any money on that fight. I think they're both too new. I want to see them fight a few more times, maybe some higher caliber opponents each, and we'll see in the future. But up next, we got Montez Jackson versus JP Buys. I'm going to be honest, Jackson's coming into this at minus 650, and I think there's a very clear reason. JP Buys, he's not very good. He's better at being his wife's training partner and coach than he is at fighting, honestly. It would be great for the UFC to see a story where he's dominant, his wife's dominant. His wife, Cheyenne Buys, just won her last fight and got fight of the night. It was honestly great to see how much she cried. They were saying how they're in debt and needed that. But that being said, I don't think JP Buys is getting a win bonus or a fight of the night bonus here. If he can show his improvement, I'll reassess and maybe think he has what it takes to be in the UFC. But at this point, I don't think he's UFC caliber. I think he needs some more time training, maybe more fights in the lower tiers, and then maybe work his way back. I think this is a fight where the UFC wants Montez Jackson to have an easy win, add to his record, and get him a higher caliber opponent next. What do you think, Troy?
I think we're finally getting to the part of the show where the big favorites are worth the chalk, baby. Montel Jackson, the largest reach at 135 pounds in the UFC. JP Buys coming up from 125 pounds to fight Montel Jackson. Wait, is there another Contender Series fighter that's coming up a weight class fighting someone with a large size discrepancy that we just analyzed? Tafon the Don and Chukwi, Mike Rodriguez. You see what the UFC is doing here. They're not big fans of these guys they got off the Contender Series. They don't think they're high caliber enough. They're feeding them to the wolves and getting rid of them. And they're just waiting for Montel Jackson to have that marquee performance because he's beating these guys, but he's not getting these highlight reel finishes. He's on a huge win streak. They're going to give him a ranked opponent eventually. They want him to kill this guy so they can give him a top 15 fighter. Montel Jackson, he is the first part of my lock of the night parlay. And with that being said, the next fight is the second component of it. We've got Erin Blanchfield versus Sarah Alpar. Erin Blanchfield's got some great wins on the regional scene against already proven UFC fighters. And this is a fight where I'm actually betting fight does not go the distance on a women's MMA fight right here. I think Erin Blanchfield's going to finish this one. Although the striking discrepancy is huge, this might be a hot take, but the grappling discrepancy is even bigger. I think Erin Blanchfield has such an advantage on the ground that once this fight hits the mat, it's over. And this is the first time Sarah Alpar has fought at 125 pounds in about 4 years. And at 135 pounds, she got destroyed by Jessica Rose Clark in her return. And she's very small for 125 pounds as well. And Erin Blanchfield seems to be the future of the sport. Highly marketable, extremely well-rounded skill set. Paid her dues on the regional scene. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen. This fight with the money line, this fight will not go the distance. Remember the name Erin Blanchfield, not Bilal Muhammad. Erin Blanchfield. What you got?
Troy, I agree. I honestly don't see Alpar having any path to victory. I think Blanchfield clearly dominates in all categories. I'm a little sketchy to take any fighter minus 300, but this is a case where I think I'll sprinkle it along in a lot of parlays. I really think Blanchfield's going to win, whether it be knockout, sub, decision. I think she really has she could finish her anyway, where I think Alpar has to get lucky basically with an overhand right that just catches her at a bad time, and or if she breaks a leg or something. Honestly, I don't see it going any other way. But up next, this is a fight I'm super excited to see. Impa Kasagane versus Carlston Harris. I love watching Impa fight. Been watching him since the Contender Series. As I said earlier, 9 out of 10 fights he would have beaten Joaquin Buckley if he didn't get caught with that kick. He's learned from that. He's going to let everyone know that doesn't define himself as a fighter. I think there's a ton of value taking Impa. He's minus 130 money line. I'm not going to make this my lock of the night just because you never know with him. But I'm saying he's coming out hungry. I want to see him get the knockout in this one. Maybe the sub. Let's see. What do you think, Troy?
I think Carlston Harris doesn't have the highest caliber of competition coming into this. He's been fighting in the United Arab Emirates. He's been fighting in Brazil. You know, a lot of these guys in these amateur scenes are very underqualified and not that good. I think Impa Kasanganay, since coming down to 170 pounds, don't forget, this is his second fight at 170 pounds. He beat Sasha Palachnikov, who looked pretty good in his last fight. And I think Impa Kasanganay, especially at this weight class with his physique, he can actually outmuscle people in the grappling department, where at 185 pounds, he was a little bit undersized with his height. And I think in this matchup specifically, although Carlston Harris showed a submission game in his last fight, I think Impa Kasanganay can neutralize that Brazilian jiu-jitsu with his wrestling and his power. So I'm going to take Impa Kasanganay in this fight. Next, we've got the bantamweight fight. We've got Haile Alateng versus Gustavo Lopez. We've seen on the Contender Series, we've seen recently in the UFC, a lot of these combate guys are not making the cut. This might be a hot take, but this might be the new Alaska FC, ladies and gentlemen, because these guys aren't coming through. And right off the bat, even though these guys don't have the best records, I'm leaning towards Haile Alateng because of the more diverse striking skill set. Although Gustavo didn't get finished by Merab Dvalishvili, let's be real, Merab always lets people back into these fights. He's trying to break takedown records, not break faces. And he's from LI. He's my boy. We're here. You know what I mean? But I think Gustavo Lopez is going to be in for a rough one in this fight. And no creo que va a ser el ganador en la pelea, which means I don't think he's going to be the winner of the fight. And I think that Haile Alateng is going to win by decision. What do you got?
Troy, I'm disagreeing with you on this. I'm taking Lopez money line. I'm not going to take him by submission or knockout just in case. But you got to remember, he's 1-2 in the UFC, but his two losses were against great opponents. He was actually a champ in one of the smaller promos. So he's definitely got the champion blood in him. I think he's going to be tested here, and if he wins this, it will show that he can take on some higher opponents. Obviously, Alateng is a decent fighter, but I really think he's coming off a loss to Casey Kenny. Obviously, Casey Kenny is a great fighter, so you can't put too much on him on that one. But ultimately, I think Lopez is going to come out hungry. I see it being a back-and-forth fight, but at the end of the day, I'm saying Lopez is getting the submission late in the fight. Maybe third round here. But for money-wise, taking Lopez money line on this. And then the first fight of the card, Emily Whitmire versus Hannah Goldie. Honestly, both these fighters are pretty bad. It's Goldie's 0-2 in the UFC, where Whitmire's 2-3. The odds are honestly so close because I think the odds makers agree that this shouldn't even be a professional fight, and both of them don't even deserve to be in the UFC. Goldie does have a win over Jillian Robertson, but this was Robertson's first fight ever, so you can't really say like she wasn't even good yet. She didn't have the experience. I don't think this really counts for much. Whitmire actually lost to Robertson in the Ultimate Fighter in one of the preliminary fights. I think Whitmire's made it clear she's not great in jiu-jitsu, as a lot of her losses are from being subbed, but I don't see Goldie going for a sub. I think the best thing to take in this is that this fight will not go the distance, but I'm sure the line on that is awful. So ultimately, I don't think anyone should bet on this fight unless you have a severe gambling problem. What do you think, Troy?
I think I have a severe gambling problem because I'm very confident in this fight. Emily Whitmire coming up from 115 pounds into 125 pounds. And this is why I'm all over this fight. Emily Whitmire has admitted to having massive anxiety problems and having issues showing up in the cage. I fade fighters like this. Tom Breeze, for example. I fade these fighters. Look at her record. It's horrible. She's coming up to 125 pounds versus Hannah Goldie, whose arms are bigger than mine. I honestly think Hannah Goldie can make her fold and quit, because it's not that she actually has the power and the ability to make all this damage. I don't think Emily Whitmire has the spirit and the heart of a fighter that's especially going to be at this UFC level. And with that being said, I'm all over Hannah Goldie in this. And Emily Whitmire is actually coming in at a slight favorite at minus 120. And as an underdog, I'm loving it. But before we get out of here, guys, I want to give you guys the whole parlay of the night. I'm going to tell you guys we're going to start this one off with Montel Jackson, Erin Blanchfield, and Anthony Smith. And then the straight lock of the night is Iwan Kutalaba inside the distance. What do you got for that?
Wow, Troy. Honestly, I don't feel comfortable taking a lock of the night, but I'm gonna you know what, I'll take him as my lock of the night. My most confident pick of the night, Impa Kasagane money line. He's gonna improve to 10-1 after this. I'm hammering it. I think honestly that might be the only thing I put severe money on in this fight. So I'm winning. I'm riding that ship, or I'm taking it down. But thank you all for watching. Let us know what you think about these picks, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Big cards coming up soon. September 25th, we've got a title fight, and I'm excited to break that one down with you guys. Have a good one.
Peace.